Okay, we are live. Should we discuss hers first, I guess?
Maybe we should wait to discuss hers at the end and hopes that she hops on.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. We can start with yours, Sierra, if you'd like.
Okay.
So for yours, again, like I think you did a really good job at like when kids wanted to join or not join. Like that one boy, I don't remember his name, but he kept coming in and coming out and coming in, and finally you're like, okay, like you need to choose. So I thought that was really good of you finally having him make a decision of where he wants to go. I don't know, overall I just thought you did a really good job, and I really liked the dog in the beginning. That was so cute. Yeah. Like that was a really good idea because the kids really responded to that. Like, how do we act during this time? He's going to be watching you. Yeah. I thought that was super cute, and they really liked that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tricks you can get away with preschool.
I know, it's kind of fun.
I'm jealous.
Y'all should try some puppets with your kiddos and see if they respond.
I should try that.
Where they tell you to put that dog.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, overall, I just thought you did a really good job at handling yourself while explaining the lesson. Because you, like with your environment, you have to multitask the whole time, like scanning to see what kids are doing while you're focusing on your lesson. So, good job.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Sometimes it feels really tricky, and it's nice to watch videos a little bit to feel like you had a little bit more control than what you felt like actually sitting there, because sometimes it feels like you have to be really mean or you got complete chaos going on. So sometimes it's nice to be like, oh, they actually were way more engaged than you realized when you were just looking at them all. So
right.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. I think it went really well with the different faces, and we talked about the dog and just keeping the students engaged. I thought that went that went really well. I wouldn't have anything else good or bad really to say about it, I don't think.
On the back of those face cards, did it have like a thing to read?
It did, yeah. It had a script on the back. So I don't know if you read about it, but in our PBIS class, I believe they talk about Second Step. It's a social emotional program. And so it is kind of nice because it has a script on the back, but also I feel like it's with early childhood, you can't really read the script because they need to know that you're engaged, like almost like fully 100% of the time. Like as soon as you take your eyes off, things start happening. So it is nice the script because it can help you stay on track, but it also can be a little tricky in the fact that you really got to be able to breeze through it quickly depending on how your students are engaging.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did have a strict script. And then also I feel like there's so many things that I instinctively just do. So I kind of got ahead of myself on the script, and I was like trying to find like where I was at, like what else I needed to cover, because I was like, oh, I already covered that, but I didn't know that's where that was on the script. So that one thing I could say I felt like I needed to do better on was like wrapping up. My kids, I could tell, were like anxious at the end of it, and so like I needed to and it's one of my overall goals as like a professional.
Yeah. I could see where you would say that.
Yeah, I'm trying to one thing I have a hard time doing with my kiddos is usually like they start getting so antsy, and then I'm like, just go play, like it's all done. But
right.
I need to make sure I'm bringing a nice closure to let's talk about what we just learned and that. So that's something I felt like even in this one I'm improving on, but I still need to work on, because I feel like sometimes they get so antsy that I'm like, okay, just go. It's okay. This is one thing
yeah.
Okay.
I'll do the same thing, and I have done the same thing, and I do try to avoid that also. But I think, to some degree, it's also just working with those younger ages. I mean, you can assess and see how much they absorbed of what you just learned, but you know they may be able to parrot some of it back to you right then, but that really isn't going to tell you just how much of it gelled, or how much of it may make sense to them half an hour the next day from now, when it comes back and they're like, oh, this is what this is. They don't know that they know it yet, because
Mhm.
just because they are that age group. But no, I could see where you would have that, and kind of that want to have that recap of, this is what we just, let's talk about what we just did, and have them explain at least some part of it back to you. And I think that's like a really strong feedback that I got from my liaison on some of the videos that I've done. So that's something that I've really tried to like very explicitly do. But and like I said, it's just when you're dealing with those younger kids, well, probably even with the older kids too, but even with the younger ones, I mean, it's really kind of a hit or miss thing. I mean, it'll gel with some, like right there, in a way that they can do that, and for some of them, either it won't, or you have to come back at it a different way, or maybe they just need to think on it a little bit more before they can really make sense of it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's like I'm glad I'm not the only one. I guess like before in practice, I haven't ever had like deep closing statements, or like let's do a brief overview of what we just discussed. I haven't been in the practice of doing that, and it's hard to get in that flow of doing that. And that's like a lot of feedback I've gotten from my liaison too, is like, okay, like let's make sure we like reinforce what we just learned. And I feel like it is tricky, because you have to make sure you have that balancing act of like engagement and participation, but also that you're not so far gone that you just lost them. And I've seen a lot of value in that, but it's definitely like something I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about, and it isn't just in my like normal routine.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like oh, sorry, you can go.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like I need to work on that too, because I feel like sometimes I'm so anxious during my lesson. Sometimes, like, okay, like, let's get through our information and then we're done, you know? But I also feel like I need to work on, for the next lesson, I never restate, like, okay, like, what did we learn from last week? Do you guys remember? I definitely need to work on that, because I'm just so focused on my right now lesson. I kind of forget, hey, what did we learn last week, to see if they were actually paying attention. So.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that in a way, I hadn't even really thought about it exactly at that level before, but I mean, even just now thinking about it, I think that's part of like that level 1 versus level 2 instruction, because it's like, when we do this, it's like we're thinking about what it is that we want to say and what it is that we want to impart to that, making sure we do that right and don't fumble over our words or lose control of the classroom or all that. And then it's like, well, on top of that, now we also need to go back and think about, are they really absorbing this fantastic lesson that I've planned out for them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like for me too, as a learner, it's nice to have like, for me, like I like to have that recap. Like I feel like it's a nice closure to be like, oh yeah, that's what I learned. Like you kind of get so like into it, or so spaced out of it, depending on the day. Like, but it's nice to be like, oh yeah, that's what we were talking about. Like it's nice to have that reminder. But yeah, it's kind of tricky to I feel like I've always been so focused like in the moment, that you're like, okay, well we just talked about all the things, so why do I need to remind you to do it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, cool.
How about Shlomo next? Are we good on Sierra? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like in your class, Shlomo, I feel like you have a couple kids that kind of mess around the whole time and really, test you while you are presenting. And I think in the beginning, they really were trying to mess with you, but I feel like you were really, okay, like that's enough of that. Like we need to focus on me now. I feel like you eventually got them to focus once you were really in the lesson.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Oh, cool. I felt like I noticed the same thing. Like it kind of seemed. And also, did you do small groups again for this
Yeah.
lesson? Yeah, I was just,
Yeah.
I wanted to put like a huge strength in the fact of like where last week's lesson was, and it kind of was like the kids were kind of like, oh, we're so excited too. I was just like, you could tell that they were so much more engaged. Like, I don't know whether it was the seating chart or like because it's the second time we've done it, but I just listened to say like, just in far as their engagement went, like that was nothing on you, but I just felt like they were so much more zoned in wherever the placement was or whatever happened with this lesson. But I was like, just from that first video to this one, it's like a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that has worked a little bit better. Just thinking about like the video itself, though, is it like, unfortunately for like both the videos, like right front and center is like my first grade kid, and he's really should have like repeated kindergarten. He isn't even really on first grade, and in some ways he's like even below that. And so it's like, on the one hand, differentiating the instruction like that far in such a short time span is like really just beyond challenging. And like, especially with these types of lessons on life skills or, self-determination, or anything like that, on the one hand, I do have like a crowd of third to fifth graders. That's most of everyone that we do. But then, I also have this first grader that, we're glad if we can just keep him to sit still and not draw all over everything. And so, and just because we need him kind of up front, he's like front and center and everything. But yeah, I would agree. It's just getting everyone else engaged. And I think that was something that went particularly well with that one, and also is just, being able to kind of challenge the ones that maybe weren't as engaged, just to get them to do that, and just to give up their, put out their own examples, and not just let them sit there and rub their eyes or whatever.
Yeah, I love seeing your guys' videos because obviously I'm in the high school setting, but just seeing like the elementary setting and see how you guys interact and get them on task, that can really help me if I do have to work in the elementary setting. So I really like to see like your guys' techniques and how that can help me in the future. So
Yeah. No, I thought it was really cool. I'm glad you pointed out. I just like saw that one student too, and I was thinking about like differentiation, and that's something I've never done, really necessarily thought about in my practice. Even though I'm in an inclusive setting, I haven't really thought about that. And so to realize that he's a first grader and most of your kids are third and fifth, I'm sure that is super challenging. So I made note of that. Like I was like, oh, it looked like he was like playing with his pencil the whole time.
Yeah.
And not that was like any part of yours, but I was like, I didn't see that, like, and of course it's always like, where's the camera and all of those things. But it did seem like it was like he either wasn't engaged, and also I don't know that child, like what the thing was, but I noticed he was really interested in his pencil the whole time.
Yeah.
But I think that it's nice that you pointed that out too, because you kind of fill us in and like let us know like that's the challenge you're working with. I wonder how often are you in a public school setting? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is it pretty typical to have like that wide of an age range in your classroom?
Yes and no. A lot of kids that come into our program usually don't start that early, to be honest. Because I'm usually going through like an RTI. We don't fully have RTI yet, but kind of like an RTI type process. Usually they'll kind of identify kids in like first, second grade, but it's when they are not seeing improvement or things are getting worse, like second going into third, fourth. Usually third, fourth is when kids really start coming in. Usually, we will get some earlier. That particular kid's really kind of a unique case where there's probably some fairly mild intellectual impairment that's combined with like really borderline criminal neglect. So it's one of those things where there's I mean he clearly does have food and clothes and shelter, so we can't necessarily call CPS, but we know that his mother has like next to nothing to do with him, and the person who takes care of him the most is like his 80-year-old grandfather who's deaf. So he really doesn't get anywhere near the interaction that he needs, but at the same time, it's not criminal neglect. So so when he came to kindergarten, he had like no skills, none. He was almost feral, and that's how he came into our program last year. And so we managed to get him to be successful in kindergarten by the end of last year, but first grade hasn't been going as well. And so we've kind of been figuring out how we're going to respond to that. So that's kind of his situation.
It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's my next IEP meeting in like a week and a half.
Wow.
For something like that, would they get, just because I work in such a totally different setting, so I'm so interested in how the public system works. Would he get like a one-on-one? Would you be able to like write that in his IEP, or how do you support him?
We could. Our director for SPED services in Caldwell really kind of views one-on-one support as a last resort. Anything else that we can do before then, she would rather that we do. And it's one of those things where, on the one hand, if you look at Fed law or CESTA or anything, LRE is percentage of time in the gen ed classroom, period, whether that's with a one-on-one or not. Right now, that's kind of almost technically what he is getting. One of our PSRs that works in the program spends pretty much most of her day with him, except for like a couple other times, just to really get that level of support there. I think we kind of need to rethink that for this IEP meeting, just because it's his thing is a really difficult balance, because on the one hand he really desires the attention and he wants that and he needs that because he's not getting it elsewhere, but at the same time the other side of that we're learning right now is that he's very quick to go into learned helplessness and just really thank you but he's very quick to go into learned helplessness, and just it's like he doesn't want independence, because then people kind of go away. And so we kind of need to figure out how we're going to make that work in a way that he's still going to grow.
That's really difficult, because you can only give him so much attention at school. Wow.
Just like opens my eyes. It's like that's just like such an amazingly difficult situation. I feel like as a teacher to be in and not know. I feel like, wow, like that would be really challenging to figure that out.
Yeah, and I mean there's a couple kids that we have that are really kind of borderline in how much they're really taking care of. So, I mean, it'd be one thing to say that was him, but it's also like not just him either, unfortunately.
Yeah. You're in Caldwell?
Yeah.
Well, what I lighter note, I thought that I thought you did really well in your lesson. I didn't really have any areas of improvement other than I thought the differentiation was maybe something, but I feel like you pretty much cleared that out. And that's something I personally am like, I don't really know how to do that appropriately in my lessons. I'm still learning that as a big thing that I need to be supported in and learn. But yeah, that was just like one of the one things, but I just thought you did really well communicating, like you would say, I thought it was one time, I thought it was cool, and I was going to ask you if it was like when you said class, and they replied class, and it was like,
yeah,
it was like something you would talk, or if that was them being like kind of giving you a hard time, but it seemed like it worked. Like you did class, and then when you said class, and then they all were like back in.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like a regular there's like kind of different ways that teachers get the attention in the school. One that they're really kind of used to actually is like the teacher will say like class, and then everyone says back yes, and that's what they're supposed to. It's kind of like a trained procedure, so I'm just kind of like borrowing on that to get them engaged, just on what I know that they're used to already.
Yeah, well, I noticed that it was very effective. It worked. Like you did that, and then they responded, and it seemed like they were kind of off, and then you did that, and they all like zoomed right back in, and you got their attention.
Yeah.
Well, how you were able to be like, okay, this is going a different direction. Like, here's my strategy, and it was effective. So I just, I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also heard that I just really enjoyed listening to the process of you getting to the students on point, and like the questions and the examples you were giving was really relatable to them, like using an infant. That was something they all really could comprehend for the most part, like it's other than one student that you could see, but it seemed like it was really a real life example that they like understood. It was relatable to them. Sometimes I feel like we use examples that they're like, we don't have any way to connect to this example, and this example you used, they were like, oh, we know about babies, like what can they do, what can they not do? And I thought it was like a really good example that they were like, we all know what a baby, like this is like a good example versus, something that only 3 kids might have experience with versus, 5.
Right.
So anyways, those are my thoughts.
I'm on the exact same page as Sierra. I kind of liked how you mentioned, like, does anyone do laundry in here? Obviously no one is going to say I do laundry, but it was kind of cool to see, like, versus the infant thing versus the laundry, just to kind of see, like, the different response to that. So I thought you did a really good job in giving examples.
Yeah, I do. I didn't really think about it from that perspective, but I also think, like, because that's, like, you use, like, a lower level maybe example for everybody to respond to, but you also, like, throw in laundry, which is, you can see the buildup of like where they're at, self-development wise, like do someone do laundry versus like where can I push them? Can they be up here? Are we starting with this example down here? Mm-hmm. But that's cool. I didn't think about that.
So good job.
Yeah.
So moving on.
And I'm sorry that mine was only 5 minutes long. I don't know what happened. I was so mad because I thought I did such a good job filming. I had all these worksheets and my students were super responsive towards my topics. So you only got 5 minutes of it. I was so mad.
Yeah, I thought that was such a bummer.
It happens, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the 5 minutes we did get to watch, you did really good.
Thanks.
From like the last lesson, the students seemed really engaged and excited to talk about money, and I just thought it was like a really real life example and topic. Again, an example they could all really relate to. We all had connections to money somehow, and so I felt like it was a really good topic to drive where you wanted to go, because they were like, we have money, we know what it is. Like they had a really good concept of like, let's talk about it. So I felt like that was cool. They were really excited. I gave you all great scores. I thought that like you also did a really good job of like expanding the questioning. So you asked like an initial question, they answered, you responded with another question to like keep building it. And I thought you did this really good like back and forth flow, whether I don't know if you had planned like these are my follow-up questions to my first question, you know, like this is what I'm gonna do, but it seemed really intentional and like really good process of back and forth, but like going deeper and deeper and deeper.
Like I had a couple initial questions, but I didn't really plan any follow-up questions. I kind of just decided to go with the flow just to see like what they would say and how I could respond to them. So that part I kind of just went with the flow. So.
Yeah, I think that for like even just my own stuff, I think that's something I've thought about where and this lesson was kind of an example of that also, where it's like you have this idea of where you want to go, but then it's like, you know, you really have like no idea what it is exactly that you're going to get back. And so, you know, there's only so much of, you know, where am I going to go from here that you can even plan.
Yeah. Like I feel like my first lesson I planned so much. I planned what I was going to say, when I was going to say it. But as the time goes on, like I guess I kind of have a script, but as you said, you don't know what's going to come out of their mouth or where it's going to go. So I still plan, but not as much with the questions because who knows where they're going to go with it. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the beauty of these topics is that you really can kind of push them to go beyond the not as structured. You can kind of push a lot more like I don't feel like I'm observation. I have that flexibility. I feel like I need to do a lot more like regimented in what we're submitting for 572. But I feel like with these at least I personally feel like with this topic, you can really expand and like go deeper and deeper and deeper and have a little more of a free flow with the targets.
Definitely.
Yeah, you had like really positive feedback. I felt like you were really excited to talk about it and like really inclusive to everybody's answers too. I felt like you made sure to validate everybody's answers and like kind of like have a little bit of humor in there and validate answers, but also in a really positive way.
Well, thank you. And I feel like with my class, you know, they like to talk over each other. So I feel like for me, it's hard. Like when one person starts talking, I'm like, okay, can you wait, please? But then they keep talking. So for me, I think I kind of need to work on that. Like just saying, okay, wait for this person to talk, wait for this person to talk, because they all just want to talk at the same time. But overall, I think I did okay.
Yeah. So like I felt like, and I don't know whether it was the topic or the class or if you worked with different students, but even from like our last one, I put like maybe like, because one lesson, it seemed like it was hard to get them to answer. And so I thought about like doing like the firing effect where they don't have to wait to talk, that everybody just kind of like starts spewing out their answers. And in this lesson, it seemed like that was more of the case, but I felt like you were getting a lot more from them too. Whereas time, and I don't know if that was like, you know, if that was different classroom or if that was different lesson and maybe they're excited about the lesson, but this time it definitely seemed like you were a lot more like of that firing and you were getting a lot more responses that you could like facilitate, whereas maybe the last lesson it seemed like you were kind of like trying to pull it out of them. So
yeah, and so this was the same class as the last lesson, but I think since it was more about money and they could relate to that more, I think that's why I had a better response. That's the only thing I can think of, but I was okay with it. I'm glad they were excited to talk about it, even if they were talking over each other. I'm glad that I could get that response from them.
Yeah, and I personally like that type of response. I think I'm trying to work on also being a little more regimented, like making sure that I hear everybody, because I feel like you tend, when you do that firing response, I feel like I've realized that I tend to not hear a couple students and not be able to validate them when they're responding. But I really like that firing effect because I feel like people, because it's not so structured, a lot of students sometimes feel a lot more open to engage because it's not so rigid of like, let me tell you.
Right.
I can just spit it out and everybody can be a part of it. So I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to that. I personally tend to like that style better.
Right. But and that was part of my feedback from my liaison, was that, you know, someone was talking, but like I didn't acknowledge them. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't acknowledge someone's answer. So I'm trying to work on that. So yeah.
I received the same feedback, and I was like, oh, I gotta make sure, like, you just didn't, I never realized that I was missing them until we did the video, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, but I've always been such a fan of this style, but I realized I can't the student every time, how terrible.
Yeah, I think that happened to me the last one too. I was like watching the video, and then like, and it was like the camera over in the back of the class, and so that like the kid that's like right in front of the camera, like towards the end of the lesson, like has his hand raised for like minutes at the time, and I'm like, please tell me, I'm still watching this. Please tell me I did eventually talk acknowledge the student, and thankfully I did.
Yeah.
On that, but yeah, it's funny, you know, and just like seeing it there, you're like, you know, he's like right there front and center of the camera for like, you know, at least a good like 2 minutes with his hand up. Like, oh God, please help me.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing on my very first video. The little girl was like right in front of the camera. Her hand was like in the center, just like held up. Like she waited for so long, and I was like, oh my gosh, I made her wait forever. I took everybody before her, and she had the first hand up. So, wow, happens. Cool. Well, yeah, I don't have any I don't have anything that I thought you could work on. I felt like it was fun to see the students so much more excited and make it fun for you, and you really responded well. I didn't really have any negative or critical, constructive feedback.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. So my next video will not be 5 minutes. It'll hopefully be 15 to 20 minutes. So, oh my gosh. But yeah.
Shall we talk about Hillary's and then like submit it to her? Because she'll be able to watch it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think she'll get the points since she wasn't here, but at least we can, like, as you said, submit it so she can see what we have to say. So
yeah.
I thought it was really cool how she started off with the peanut butter and honey. So they had to write down each step word for word, which I thought the peanut butter and honey and put it on the sandwich. And so she literally put the jars on the bread, and she's like, oh, is this what you meant? They're like, no, well, you have to open the jar first. So I thought that was a really cool way to like get the kids to interact with each other and with the assignment.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was funny. I feel like I remember having us do that assignment before, and it really makes you think about like, oh my gosh, there's so many steps that we just assume people know, or especially in teaching, like you got to break down all these things that we just like say, and you're like, oh gosh, you got to like be much more clear about that. So I thought it was a really cool way for them to connect. I thought it was an interesting way to connect it to math. It seemed like she connected that to math and how you got to show all your steps, and like that's how you solve the problem. So I thought that was a really positive way to manage. I always find that her sense of humor and her engagement with her students, it just looks like they're having so much fun. Every time it just looks like it's a fun classroom to be in and to be a part of. Which I just think is like consistently to see that type of energy in a teacher day after day is a really cool thing, that like everybody's just giggling and laughing and having a really fun time. Like it's a fun place to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, all in all, like I'm trying to think of like what she could improve on. I feel like every time, like she does a really good job at engaging her students, you know, having them go up to the board. I'm so jealous that she can do that and have them go up to the board and be part of it. I don't know. I just feel like she always does a really good job at interacting with her students.
Yeah, definitely. And the question technique, I feel like is really good, and the feedback and engaging the students. Like I feel like she just knows, and you know that might be a benefit of having the smaller class size, because she's only had 3 to 4 kids in her class each time, which you know would seem to be a manageable amount of kids to really get that kind of energy flowing.
Totally. Yeah.
So but I think they're always really engaged. I like how she gets them up and out of their chair, which is like, I think one of the best things, like for kinesthetic learners and for auditory learners, is she really uses all those different learning styles to get the kids involved.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
My guess for everyone is using assessment and instruction. I'm not quite sure what that element is asking for, and I don't really know how to score everybody on that because I'm not quite sure.
Well, that's just kind of what we were talking about earlier, is that whole thing of during the course of the instruction, kind of getting some kind of feedback from the students that they're getting what it is that you're telling them. Kind of like that, the whole that second video that you did with the hand washing, where you kind of went over with the girl about, this is what we learned, this is what we did, this is why this is important, but kind of like integrating that into the whole lesson itself as it goes. And like I said, I think that's something that we all talked about and that we all wanted to work on, is just, are you using things during the lesson that let you know that the students are learning?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is kind of a difficult part, I feel like, sometimes, is the assessment part of it.
Yeah, and I guess when I think of assessment, I always think like a formal type of assessment. I don't think like just like questioning. Questioning.
Yeah.
So
My mentor was really kind of thrown for a loop for that too. So when we did like the whole the learning plan thing, he really didn't know what to do with that, because the idea of assessment and instruction was really kind of foreign to him in that sense too. But that was something that my liaison kind of clarified with that, because that was like kind of like one of my front and center really big questions about what exactly is meant by that. And that's really kind of what it came down to, is that, and like I said, it's it's easy to kind of think about what it is that you want to teach, and what you want to get across, and what you think would be a good approach to do that. But then then on top of all that, and the classroom management, just trying to see how much of it is actually sticking with the students that you have. And like I said, it's a difficult thing to do, especially like I said with like the earlier grades, where they may get it, but may take time for them to even know that they get it. And so it's really kind of difficult thing to really assess in the moment, in addition to everything else that you're trying to do. And I think
Oh, sorry.
I think also it's also maybe a little bit different from, like, especially like if we think about early childhood, or like our elementary school years, even my high school years, they didn't really, that may not have been something that was part of how we were used to being taught. And so and I think probably good teachers even years ago would do that, but just the idea of that being necessary and like part of what's even considered competent teaching is probably like a little bit new.
Mm-hmm.
thank you for clearing that up. I'm like, I always like think of like a formal assessment, and that helps a lot.
So assessment during instruction could just be like a simple question to see if they're understanding the content.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I think we did cover everything.
I think so. Anything else you guys want to add?
I can't think of anything.
I think we got it all.
Yeah.
Well, too bad Hillary couldn't join, but I can copy and paste this on an email and send it to her.
Yeah.
And then I will send this in so for this week. And I guess I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for meeting with me on Wednesday. I know it was like a tight schedule, but I really appreciate it.
No, that's okay.
No problem.
Nice to have it done and out of the way, though.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Well, have a good weekend, guys. I'll see you next time.
Yeah,
All
thanks.
right.
Yep. Bye.